I spend a lot of energy out in the community using the resources that we've applied here at Jim and Nick's to help ourselves succeed. And that's where I put all my energy and effort. Mike was running one of the restaurants, doing a great job, again, up in sales. And I went out and made connections in the community. I worked real hard by joining all the chambers, by being an active member of the GRA, the ACBB, NACE, I mean, you name it. We wound up really getting engaged. We wound up making ourselves known to, literally, to people that had never known who we were. We don't do any traditional marketing by any means. We do 3% of our sales we put back into the community, and not to say that advertising, local means of advertising is a good way to go, but we like to put it back in through the community. So we used a lot of these resources to harness our ability to get back into the community, such as a local store marketer. Local store marketer would be, Suzanne would be a great example of an LSM. That's a concept that has probably been developed really only in the last year for us. And it's been a tremendous program. Steve Allman right there is another local store marketer on steroids. He happens to help me run all 5 of these restaurants. The local store marketing program became a very, very big part of our success last year because we would, as I talked to Joey about, take the Business Chronicle every week. Steve can attest to this. I would highlight leads. I just found out this week, the front cover says Boeing is going to get their Dreamliner, and in Suwanee they're going to grow by 250 jobs. I see that as market share, an opportunity that I don't currently have. So I highlighted that. You don't have this yet, Steve, but you will. And the intent is that we contact the group that just got awarded that big contract from Boeing. We find out how we can help them celebrate from an off-premise standpoint. The local store marketer will help make contact with them, and then actually we'll wind up wanting to do something called the food show, where we'll come in and we would really like to just introduce them to who we are, really no strings attached. It's just an opportunity to get to come to know our story about Jim and Nick's. So where we get to put out, we start with past platters of pimento cheese and hot links and ham, followed by a nice Greek salad. It only makes sense. His last name was Pahakis. Yes, we import all of our Kalamata and feta and pepperoncinis. So it's a great Greek salad. And that goes on the table. Then we let the food talk. We tell the story about the successes we've had here in Atlanta. That, again, talking about market share, we've won Taste of Atlanta for the last 3 years. We worked real hard at that, and I attribute all that success to Mike Hoffman having gotten us there. We did, was it Gwinnett Magazine, Best of. All of a sudden, the harder we worked and applied the resources that Nick and his father put down some 25 years ago, we were in a position to take that and present it to people who had no idea who we were through a food show. What that did is it opened up the opportunity for them to see, at a very reasonable cost, the opportunity for them to enjoy Jim and Nick's, turn it on to their folks, and next thing you know, we were doing caterings starting at 300, 400, 500, 1,500, up to 8,000 people. That is how last year grew so exponentially, was because we went from being focused on being a really great carry-out drive-through restaurant, investing a lot of energy in the off-premise business, and I go back to the fact, again, all of these models, if they work, we're 40% off-premise. So between that and some of the initiatives that we did inside the restaurant, I'm gonna label myself, and I'm trying to count how many syllables it is. I would tell you that if you were to talk about my approach to restaurateuring, I would be what you'd call an interdependent fundamentalist. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm going to try to break it down. Somebody mentioned earlier, I believe, about being an independent operator. And while that probably is something I've certainly aspired to do, the word scares me to death, because independent means I'm out there by myself. And while that sounds really noble, it scares the hell out of me, so I didn't do it. I have 4 other partners, and we're all in the banknotes together, but it's better to have safety in numbers than be out there by myself. So when I say interdependent, I am highly, highly dependent upon all of my partners. I'm also highly, highly dependent upon all of my colleagues, not only within the GRA organization. I'm also interdependent with people like yourself. Billy from the barbecue joint that you're going to have to come here, I called him and said, hey, I hear you may be coming out here. He owns a barbecue joint, just opened up 6 weeks ago in Carrollton. Next thing I know, he said, hey, before we get off the phone, let me ask you about Southern Pride Smokers. It takes one barbecue guy to another to know what that means. But we start talking about Southern Prides, and when we hang up the phone, we exchange all the information, and I don't think that's going to be the last I've heard from Billy. So this interdependency is something that I grabbed out of a book a very long time ago by Stephen Covey called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Has anybody ever read or heard that? It is, without question, my all-time favorite. Suzanne can tell you that I quote it often. I start with the end in mind, like I'm imagining when this talk's going to end. I imagine when I go to a catering and I say, tell me what you want it to look like. Well, all of a sudden I'm pulling forward things like empathy. I'm putting myself in their shoes, but that's a Covey thing. When I see an event being, my end in mind when I do a catering is, I want to see the glowing letter that we have up on our walls in the hallway there that say, you guys exceeded our expectations. And so you work backwards from there. That's a Covey thing. Seek first to understand, but then to be understood. Those are those principles that I live by from Covey and 7 Habits. And he talks about being interdependent. The fundamentalist, that's being fundamentals. And I think that's where I'm going to go back to 2009 and talk about that, because that's that slippery slope. Going out and building sales from 400,000 to $1 million, it's kind of like crack. Not that I would know personally, but I would tell you that it gets kind of addictive by nature. You kind of get excited. It's not that funny, Suzanne. I mean, the fact that you could go out and turn people onto it and they validate what your hard work is, not only by eating it, but paying you big money, big cash sums, it was wonderful. But fundamentally, I lost my way. And I knew this probably in the fall of 2009 because I wasn't paying as much attention to these things. I really attribute our job to being no different than that of a circus clown. I hope that's not a bad analogy, but I really see that what we do on a day-to-day basis is no different than if any of you are of the age where you've been to the circus and you see the clown getting out there and they start with one stick and one plate and they spin it. They do the second one. And that's neat, but it's really neat when they get up to about 13 or 14 or 16 sticks and plates. And what happens if the first plate you started, you don't go back to, it falls to the ground. And I really see that's our job. This was for me to help compartmentalize and develop an understanding within all of my managers, the leaders of our operations. You can't just be really great at food quality and not pay attention to sanitation. So spinning plates to me is multitasking on all levels, staying in tune with all facets of our business while not getting distracted by what I referred to earlier, which was this addiction to go out and grow sales. Growing sales is important for our business, but so are the fundamentals of it. Anybody know what the 7 P's are? Say it again.
Poor planning promotes piss poor performance.
That's right. Proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. Period. End of story. I'm a measure twice, saw once kind of guy. Mike will tell you that I obsess, perhaps too much, about a plan going into any catering, any event, even a shift. But mostly when it comes to those things that we're not used to and comfortable with, I'm looking at every possible thing